and don't know if they're going to have, and they've been quietly suffering, and then they get perhaps questions from well-meaning people. When's it going to happen? When are you guys going to give us a baby?
Okay, we are live with Dr. Tanya Wild and Dr. Susan Fox from the US of A today in the house. Woohoo!
Good morning.
Welcome. And this is such a critical conversation. And we were so super happy and thrilled for you to join us, because this in Canada, actually, I don't know if it is yet in the States, but it's Canadian Infertility Awareness Week here.
Yes, it is. This whole week is.
Okay,
yeah.
Same. Mm-hmm. All right. So National Infertility Awareness Week.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we all hate the word infertility. So we like to call it subfertility or fertility challenged. Mm-hmm. But the bigger driver to this conversation is because Mother's Day is also coming up, and it may be a trigger for those of you that are, in life. So, and if it is, this is a great conversation for you. And if it isn't, you're just going to have awesome tips anyway. So stick around. And if you want to get back to our conversation, definitely go to our My Fertility podcast. So before we start, I think we want to do a proper introduction as to who you are. But before the proper introduction, I just want to add in that I met Dr. Susan with the founding group of, what is it called? It's such a long name. I always forget. The
Clinicians for Fertility Program or something along that line.
Practitioners with Dr. Randy Lewis, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like we were like the founding group. Yeah. And we would get together as practitioners and not only speak to talking about patients, but really even our own personal journeys of life. And I think it's so critical as practitioners that we hold ourselves and we take good care of ourselves, because I don't think we can help others if we don't take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So Tanya, do you want to share with everyone about Dr. Susan?
So in her work supporting women and couples in their fertility journeys over the past 20 years, Dr. Susan has shared in their success and sufferings. Traditional Chinese medicine, such as TCM, teaches that alchemical healing includes not only protocols and prescriptions, but also being seen and held in a sacred space during one's most vulnerable moments. She has learned from the wisest teachers in her field the importance of 100% engagement and 100% surrender as a requisite for making space for miracles. Such a beautiful woman and mother and doctor. And tell us more, maybe start by sharing us your story.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I really appreciate it. And I agree, this is a crucial conversation to have, because so many people who might be listeners could be feeling that they're isolated. It's only them. Everyone else is having, a unicorn and daisies life experience as we show up on social media. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of dive into perhaps the shadow of it all. So I am Dr. Susan Fox. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been practicing in the field of fertility for the past 20 years. The wise teachers who I mentioned are in fact, as Mary suggested or inferred, is Dr. Randy Lewis, and then also Dr. Lori DeChar. And why I resonate with them so much and why I resonate with this medicine so much, especially in the mysterious area of fertility or subfertility, is that they included the sort of the psycho-emotional, spiritual dynamic that takes place. And I think that gets so often overlooked in our lab reviews of AMH or PCOS or, all of these other things that are important, of course, and I do include them, but I think that I think we miss the mark if we don't look at the person. Personally, my entree into Chinese medicine was not fertility. It was other health issues. And like most of us, Chiron, the wounded healer, saw the I'm going to use the term miracle because I had been shifted back and forth between other allopathic medical physicians without success. But when I entered the healing modalities of Chinese medicine, it was profound. And what I love about these medicines, these traditional medicines, and Chinese medicine isn't exclusive. A lot of just the natural medicines, the traditional medicines offer these insights that we can feel innately something's happening here. The communication goes to our heart and soul, not just, to our lab values. So that's when I got sold, and I've been a devotee since.
Yes, and I just love bringing it back down and reminding us it's not just about treating the physical body, because then it does really miss the mark. It can help for sure, but again, that's no better than any kind of symptomatic treatment. And we profess to say we want to treat all of you, and every aspect of you, from physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the whole gamut, because that's who we are. We're not just one physical body. We're not just a organ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Yeah, I read some of your responses, and when I brought forth some of the questions that we were going to cover, and I'm just like, yes, I'm so excited because we can still get into AMH values and how much should you bleed, and how should you how much is too much, how much is too little, right? And then
important data points.
Yeah, they're all important data points, absolutely. But we always need to bring it back to, okay, how are we feeling? Mm-hmm. Where are we at? So then let's talk about straight into, because Mother's Day is coming. Like what about Mother's Day or any other kinds of celebrations can be a trigger for people that are struggling to conceive?
Yeah, well, Mother's Day in particular is one, right? Because it names the very thing that so many people who are yearning for that title, if you will, don't have yet, and don't know if they're going to have. And they've been quietly suffering, and then they get perhaps questions from well-meaning people. When's it going to happen? When are you guys going to give us a baby? Or if they know that there is a delay, just relax, it'll happen. Have a glass of wine, and that doesn't help these women or couples. But I think we're reaching out to women in particular. So we're using the term mother. It doesn't help them. It only further isolates them. So my desire for anyone listening who wishes to be a mother for the first time or second or third time, because it's not exclusive, that feeling of isolation and desire is not exclusive to someone who's not yet had a child, is to just really give yourself the space to have your feelings be sacred, have your feelings be recognized, and so that they can get out of your body and not be necessarily running you, but you can work with them.
Right. And again, so you're bringing to the great point of, it's not about just pretending that everything's okay when they're not, and shoving those emotions down, because of course in Chinese medicine, we'll look at it as an avenue towards imbalance. Right.
And Mary, you covered this so exquisitely in your book. I mean, in your vulnerability, you just kind of outed yourself, or it was not fun. It was hard. Mm-hmm. And so I think that readers or listeners who may not have read your book would do well to really, kind of join the sisterhood of knowing that, it really can be a tough road sometimes. And with proper support, it gets less tough.
Wow. Thank you for addressing that. And I did not pay Dr. Susan to say any of this.
You did not.
It's called Pathways to Pregnancy, if you haven't read it. And I've had some people say, oh my gosh, this is like the little book of hope, or this is the chicken soup for your pregnancy soul. So it's really lovely that you mentioned that. And it's true. I wrote it for that reason, to, stop the isolation and the stigma and create hope. So I just want to bring it back to Tanya, because Tanya also had a fertility challenge. Were you triggered at all on Mother's Day, since we're on this note? Or any kind of celebrations? Did you have any?
I think, it's funny. I was triggered one Mother's Day, the Mother's Day that I already had a baby. And I was disappointed that I wasn't honored enough by my spouse at the time. And I was like, it was just one of those things. I'm like, this is my first Mother's Day. And I don't know, it was just one of those things. I've never been able to experience this before. And I was disappointed and I cried. I remember it was emotional. It's like a year postpartum or whatever. But so it's funny how it hits you. So it's really important to honor the grief. Like you said, I really love what you wrote, Dr. Fox. I recommend giving grief its honor and spending dedicated time to different things, which I'd love for you to touch upon, because I think when you're going through the fertility journey, honoring your grief helps you later once you have your children as well. So tell us about that a little bit.
Well, thank you. And I also resonate with it is so primal that we want to be acknowledged for what it is to be a mother, that when we get there, we almost feel like, there should be a hallelujah chorus for us. Yeah. So what I mean by honoring the grief is that our modern culture really does not want to embrace any of the so-called negative emotions. We want everybody to be shiny, happy, everything's fine, nothing's wrong kind of personalities. We get uncomfortable with other people's grief. And older traditions, ancient traditions did not practice this way. If there was a reason for grief, and for example, a loss, a death, there was sacred time set aside for it. In some traditions, it would be wakes and funerals. In other traditions, it would be anniversaries, or even sort of national, if you will, holidays to celebrate that which we've lost, those who we've lost. And I really want to impart the point that we don't grieve for that which we don't love. If there's something that we don't have, but we don't love it, we don't want it, whatever. It goes by. It doesn't grip us. So the very fact that something grips our heart is a sign. It's a physical and physiological and emotional sign that something in our life's journey wants attention. And I think that we owe it that, because a life experience is going to likely have all of the emotions, the ones that feel great and the ones that feel kind of rotten sometimes. But if we don't give it that honor, in the Chinese medicine model, and Mary, you'll probably second this, we have a concept called gui, ghosts, and that principle, that experience, if you will, lives in what we call the lung and large intestine organ system, which are also associated with grief. And because everything is energy, therefore, if we don't allow our grief its due, allow it to, sort of be honored for the purpose of letting it go, of course, but it's not about for the purpose of holding on to it forever, that when we give it its due and give it its honor, it will dissipate because it's energy. And if we don't, then it's going to hang around like a monkey on our back and chase us around like, but you haven't attended to me yet. So it's both an encouragement and a warning, I suppose, of course, if you want to really heal your grief, you must give it its sacred space. And you can do that by, a journal, or a conversation with a professional or a friend or a counselor. If that's a more spiritual path is your draw, or walks in nature. Nature is a wonderful counselor. So just getting out to where evidence is there every day, the evidence of letting go. The tide goes out, the leaves fall, the winter comes, and what was once a beautiful flower is now looking like a dead shrub, but we know it's not dead. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an esoteric analogy, a visual cue, if you will, to know that it happens all the time. We exhale. If we didn't exhale, we wouldn't get another inhale. So there's a letting go that we do all the time.
Well, and of course, and part of that inhale, exhale, I mean, we need to let go before we can receive, right? And exactly. In this way, in receiving life, receiving yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder even about mothering, recognizing that you're a mother already. I would often kind of counsel myself, like mothering the mother, like just,
Indeed.
and
yeah, for sure. And we are, if we're taking care of a pet, we're mothering. If we're, picking up our neighbor's newspaper for her or him, we're mothering. All of those actions are mothering. If we're, opening the door for someone else or letting someone get in front of us in their busyness to get to their destination, but, they're cutting us off, we're mothering. All of that is an act of love, if you will, and it is all mothering. So we can really claim our motherhood, whether or not we are pregnant or have given birth to a live child.
Thank you. And I think that is such a point well taken, because Mother's Day is about honoring yourself as a mother in this moment and how we be at mothering ourselves. So love it. Love it. So we were talking about, because with the grief and with the stress of it all, like, can you address, could the stress of stressing about Mother's Day or any other occasion impact fertility?
I would say 100%. And all we have to do is just take a minute and imagine our physical bodies when we're stressed. What happens? We close down a bit. We constrict ourselves. It's almost a protective mechanism, if you will, but we get a little tighter in our whole body and mind and spirit. And of course, then physically and physiologically, our systems are responding in kind. And they're going to say, well, this is a stressful moment, so therefore I must protect this living body and fight or flee that saber-toothed tiger. It's a very primal response. And then therefore, with the rise in our stress hormone, cortisol, it's going to impact our hormonal chain of communications for fertility. It's going to impact our digestive system. So there is a time we live in stress. We can't go, sit in isolation on a mountaintop and practice our mantras, 24/7, 365, but we can live in our stressful lives in a less stressed way. That breathing that we talked about, that box breathing, inhaling to the count of 4, holding to the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 4, holding out to the count of 4 is a great way to interrupt that stress reflex or response, because it is the one place in our parasympathetic nervous system, the one that we don't necessarily control, but we can control it with our diaphragm by taking those deep breaths. We're telling our body, we don't need to be fighting or fleeing right now. We can actually just be opening and softening and receiving. And that's actually what, sort of fertility and conception and birthing is. It's really receptive, more than active.
So, and I love the analogies that you're providing here. And I guess one thing that I want to drive home with, along with that, is, it's not about then getting stressed about being stressed. And, that stress will actually cause you to be infertile. No, you're not saying that at all, but I could just imagine the churning of the head, right? So, and because it's really about, well, there's a stress reflex as a way of protection. So how do we, help to undo that, which you have kindly offered so much advice towards as well. But I just want to really, mention that again, so that women or couples are not going straight into, oh my gosh, I need to be less stressed.
Right. That's true. You cannot stress your way out of stress, but you can breathe your way out of stress. You can have a dance party in your living room to shake it off. We're animals. We can do that as well. So if the stress really needs to be shaken off, do so. You'll feel better. Do what you love. And if you can't remember what you love, maybe think back to when you were prepubescent, 10, 11, 12. What did you love to do then? That's going to be a good cue, and do that. And it's going to be different for everyone. Some would say, I would love to run up a hill, or others would say, I would love to write in my journal, or write poetry, or dance, or something. Usually it's something in the more artistic, creative realm, where we're using the freedom of our bodies and not the taskmaster of our brains. But yeah, there are so many ways to mitigate stress that we have at our disposal every single day.
That's awesome. And I guess that kind of leads towards, what are your top 3 tips navigating this whole journey and Mother's Day or any other kind of celebratory times?
Yeah. First, prepare yourself. If you say, oh, Mother's Day is next, whatever, and I'm going to show up at this place and I'm already feeling the stress just thinking about it, almost practice, fake it till you make it, if you will. Like, what can I do for myself so that I already have my answers? Should I be expecting those questions prepared? And then how can I, once again, give to myself in preparation? Is it a bath? Is it, lighting a candle? Is it, maybe purchasing some flowers for yourself? Do what you can to stimulate your own creativity, because in Chinese medicine, I preface a lot of my statements with in Chinese medicine, the stress is a function of what we call liver qi stagnation. And what the liver loves to do is create, express, do what it came in here to do as a life force. So to turn the tables, if you will, from that suppression, repression, depression to expression. What do I want to do? Who am I? And damn it, I'm going to show you all who I am, and you're going to love me for it.
Love it. So self-expression for yourself. And then I would even add in even self-expression towards others, right? Telling them what you need and telling them what will work, or even creating boundaries. And so let's say Mother's Day, there's a giant party and you're just not up for it. Be kind and say, hey, Mom, I will, catch you on another day. I'm just not up for this, whatever it looks like. And I just want to add this in just because it just came up. I remember having a patient and she was telling me, and she's Chinese, and they would actually go out for dim sum. I don't know if you know what dim sum is.
I love dim sum.
Okay. So it's a luncheon thing, and it was extended family. And for Mother's Day, what happened was, in terms of when the bill came, it was like, all those that are not mothers with a child had to pay for those mothers. So can you imagine this woman who's desperately wants the child having to pay for these other mothers?
Right. It's like the punishment. Talk about salt, literally salt in the wound. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes. So, and and that's just one story. So I can't imagine other stories out there. And so that's what I'm saying. You honor yourself and know your boundaries and limitations. And if you expect that things are not going to go the way that would work for you, it won't be helpful for anyone. So you might as well honor yourself and just graciously decline and do something different.
Right. Mary, when you were speaking of the boundaries, it reminds me of what we call upright gallbladder qi. And it is about boundaries, and it is about perceiving the energies that either we want to bring in and welcoming them, or of those that we don't want to bring in, we sort of brush aside or step out of their way. It doesn't have to be a battle. It really is about honing your perception for what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And if something or someone doesn't work for you, just step aside and get out of the way and let that energy sort of just roll past, almost like the martial artist sparring. They don't combat each other. It almost looks like a dance performance where the one who can get out of the way quickly enough will send that opponent tumbling, because her discernment is exquisite, such that she knows that moment when she says, if I stay here, I'm going to, have a conflict. If I step out of the way, it's not mine.
Wow, I love that imagery. And thank you for bringing in back about the gallbladder, which is in charge of decision making as well in Chinese medicine. So the energetics is so important, right? And don't we all know and feel energy? And the reason why I say that is some people say, oh, but I'm just a science girl. It's like, well, but haven't you ever walked into a room of a crowded place and maybe it's lively, but then someone else walks in and then it brings like this dark cloud, and all of a sudden the energy shifts in a room. Haven't we all experienced something like that? Or oppositely?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So it's tangible.
Yep.
So any other
I was just going to say, how about things more around kind of how to be with yourself, resting, perhaps like just even building yourself up before an event, because perhaps there's times where you can't avoid the event, which, you know, I remember the years leading up to having my son. It was a 3-year journey, and then it was 8 years to complete my family. And I just remember there were times where I was just like, I don't want to just boycott the event. It's just not me. It's not who I am. And so what are some things that women can do to really kind of nourish themselves, perhaps to leading up to that time?
Sure.
So they feel they can handle it.
Yeah. First, I would say we are carbon beings. So nourishing ourselves with high quality nutrition and hydration will have the physical aspect of our nervous system calmer. If we're loading up on caffeine, to kind of supercharge ourselves, we're not going to feel at our best. We're not going to feel calm. And mind you, I'm not opposed to caffeine. So if that's what you want to have, by all means, but complement it with something that is helpful to your body. Get proper sleep. Some of these just fundamentals, the pillars, if you will, of a healthy lifestyle. And then again, prepare yourself. If you know you're going to go and you anticipate that there's going to be some challenge around that, we prepare for exams, we prepare for this conversation a bit. So we can prepare for those kind of conversations as well. What might I say if someone says this? And not to get knickers in a twist, as we say down here, not to get all tied up around the, if this happens, all will be lost. But it really is about that, exercising that muscle of self-care. So it does come back to, what do you love to do? For some people, maybe spending a few minutes on the yoga mat would be exactly perfect for them. Whereas another person would say, that would drive me batty. I need to go for a quick run before I go over to the event. So really just, we need more opportunities anyway these days to tune into who we are, what our needs are. And, maybe you put it up on a sticker on your bathroom mirror or, whatever is going to remind you. And I'm not talking solely about affirmations. I'm talking about self-recognition. So you tell yourself what you need, and you give yourself what you need, and you ask from others for what you need, knowing that you may not get those needs met, but if you've got 2/3 of the way done, you're good.
And of course, if you don't try, then you're never going to know. So if there's someone that is going to be at the social function that has your back, you could say, hey, you know what? I'm probably not going to be so comfortable having any kind of conversation about children. Then you can make a request and say, hey, maybe you could deflect it for me and I can just walk away. And so then it's a team effort versus you feeling all alone.
Right.
I think also taking time away from social media a little bit, even though we're right now sitting on this, but, like unicorns and rainbows, I think I heard you earlier. Yes. I think we spend too much time scrolling and thinking we're relaxing doing it, but just what you're saying kind of separately, maybe light a candle, lie in a yoga mat. That nourishment is different than compared to, let's say, scrolling on Instagram.
Right. That scrolling is a dumbing down, right? There's no way we are self-reflecting when we're scrolling on Instagram or Twitter, especially. So turn off those devices. Give yourself the time to live your life, to claim your life exactly as it is right now, including your desires that may not be met right now, but this is your life. So, claim it. This is your space and time, and you have a right to be here and have every single emotion that is cascading through you. But I think the caveat is, have those emotions so that they don't have you.
Love it. And thank you for your kind words of wisdom. And as you speak with wisdom, I'm reflecting and going, well, really, it's for all of us. It's not just anyone trying to conceive. It's just as human beings, we need to do this for ourselves anytime, anywhere.
Right. It's simply that is a demographic, I think, that forgets, because they do get caught up in the world of lab values and supplements. And if I do this, then I get that. paradigm, which we must do this.
Yes, that's right.
But it doesn't guarantee a getting that. So it is that 100% engagement and 100% surrender.
I love that. And again, especially those type A individuals, it's like, not only do I have to do it, but I have to do it perfectly. And I better go to every acupuncture session on time or else it's not going to happen. I better have, oh my gosh, I didn't have this supplement today at the right time. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to get pregnant this cycle. Right. And that's not life. That's that contractile energy versus being more open and knowing and trusting that you're doing all that you possibly can. So it's not like about not doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. And when we catch ourselves in those doings, because we are human and we are fallible, compassion. That's when we mother ourselves. That's when we go, oh, honey, you're struggling. Let's take a minute, kind of a little, like you would cuddle the child within and say, wow, what's happening here? What do you need? Just take that moment.
It's so funny because there was a time in my life leading up to subfertility that I believed wholeheartedly in this, because my mother raised me reading Louise Hay books and the power of the mind and your physical organs and body, and going through naturopathic medical school. And then I was going through my fertility journey and I thought, maybe this is all hogwash. Like I just went through this, like I'm angry kind of stage. And then conceived my son with help and still did everything right, being a type A, like nutrition and exercise, supplementation, going for acupuncture, showing up on time, going for fertility treatments. And then the funniest thing, and I've shared this story before, was, and it doesn't mean that leading up to this, I didn't, continue to lead a healthy lifestyle, but Christmas time, ovulating with a cold, drinking alcohol, and then, having an argument with somebody or discussion, I guess you could say resolution, like it was like an emotional block. I had to deal with that, and writing a chapter of a book, so very like creative time, and then got pregnant naturally while waiting to get a transfer the next month. So
wow.
It made me believe that again. Yeah. Like what you're sharing, it really it helped me get solid with that, which was quite a journey to kind of disconnect with the whole, concept. Cause my mother was like, oh, just believe and it'll happen, and getting very frustrated with that advice. And then living it, actually, being receptive and dealing with the emotional blocks. And now recognizing that we can't, say, oh, just go away on vacation, but we don't want to dismiss the idea that it can definitely play a role, having emotional blocks. Right. You just don't sometimes realize it when you're in it.
Love that. And it's so true. I mean, and when you said belief, right? So you can go teeter-totter one way or another, and it's not necessarily about, it's that land of gray. So I of course we want to do things, but we are human beings. So it's about how we be as we do. That's the most important piece, as we do.
Yeah. How we be as we do to change our perception so that we can enjoy the journey a little more, because there's some rocky roads sometimes, right? So it's finding so that you can make space for nice memories. And if it's totally traumatic, you can rewrite your story later. Because that's happened a few times in my life. Rewriting it helps.
For sure. And I would venture to say that while I love your story, and it is so true that in the releasing whatever that emotional block was, that is the liver qi stagnation, the anger, the grief that we talk about that is so constraining. I would purport that all of the checklists that you had done prior, insofar as nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle, set you up for, once that blockage was released, life, we say nature abhors a vacuum. And so once that blockage was released, you were perfectly set up for that miracle of life to occur.
Yes, I totally believe that.
So before we leave off, for all those that are listening, watching, you can find Dr. Susan Fox. She also has a Fundamentally Fertile podcast, and I had the honor of being on her podcast. So I love how you speak to the alchemical change that it is part of the journey, right? But we don't talk about it so much. And you certainly hold true to this in all your conversations. So check out her podcast. And of course, you can go back to our podcast and check out all things fertility there as well. Slightly different viewpoints, but all great. So there's plenty of things for you guys to do. But again, which I know lots of you like to do, and it's just how we honor and be as we're doing, and creating less stress for ourselves as we're doing it.
Oh, I second that emotion.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.